Ever set a goal or resolution at the beginning of the year only to forget it by February? Or feel like something's wrong with you when you don't follow through? Now, this doesn't mean you're undisciplined or uncommitted. Goals function a lot like prediction. They're binary, fixed, and rigid. They work for short term planning, for sprint cycles, and for getting something specific done. But when you're looking out at the year ahead, especially in times of change, a goal will not orient you. What you need is a vision. A vision invites direction without certainty, and it creates space for possibility and surprise. And it keeps you in relationship with where you're going, even as the path twists, turns, and unfolds. And well, astrology is your tool to understand where opportunities and timing are available so that you can work with your energy instead of fighting against it. And that's what our episode is about today. Welcome back, Star Powered family. And if you're new here, aloha and welcome. I'm Leslie Tagorda, Hawaii born astrologer, author of the upcoming book Astrology for Changemakers, coming out in September 2026, and creator of the Astrobrand Method. I light the path for visionaries, healers, and changemakers like you to attune to your strengths, purpose, and power written in your stars so that you can stop fighting who you really are and become the leader you were born to be. If astrology, leadership, and real change through an uncolonized lens are your jam, click subscribe and let's dive in. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Star Powered Podcast. I'm Leslie Tagorda, your host, and this is my first solo episode, yes, of this year, but it feels like a really long time since I've sat down and had the energy and capacity to do a solo episode. So, today I really want to talk about this idea of vision, why visioning is so much more important than goal setting. And if you're stuck in goal setting, this old way is just not going to work in today's world. Now, what was really inspiring me, I don't know if you heard my last episode that I did with a collaboration with Jackie McDonald, and we were talking about setting an intention for the new moon in Capricorn. We were talking about Capricorn, how it just feels so heavy sometimes when we're stuck in that obligation, the duty, and the goals. And she was saying, I have this client who's having a hard time with visions and goals. And we started exploring the difference, or how I see the difference between goal setting and visioning. And I noticed that most likely a lot of us are really stuck in like, I got to set a goal. I have to figure out the strategy. I have to figure out how. Personally, for me as an Aquarius, I've never really liked creating goals. Yes, I have a quarterly plan, which is sort of like goal setting, and I have different things that I want to check off. I love my lists. But every time I've set a goal, I've always fallen short. Now, in that episode with Jackie, we were talking about intention settings because when you're setting a goal, this you have to assume that your goals, you're looking at your goals like the little tasks that you need to accomplish to reach that bigger term vision. And if you don't know where you're going, where you want to end up, that direction, that overall the place in the future that you want to end up, then a goal is never going to help you. And so a vision is so much more than seeing the future. Yes, your vision is a picture of the future that you would love to see in the future, a picture of the people that you're surrounded with, the people that like what you're doing, how you're contributing back. But a vision is also a way for you to get clear on your intention, what you are open to receiving, shifting, evolving, and changing. And so today, in this short little episode, I really want to talk about why goal setting and prediction share the same flaw, why visioning is more than seeing in the future, how astrology helps you vision the future you desire, and how to receive all of that in flow, meaning not fighting against yourself, and why visioning matters just like not only in like the greater scheme, but like right now, right now as we approach the Aquarius eclipse. And lastly, I'm going to invite you to an experiment, a visioning experiment, ritual, and community gathering on the Lunar New Year eclipse that I call Vision Starlab. So let's get into this. Now, I don't know if you know this about me. I mentioned earlier that like goal setting, I'm not really into goal setting. And you know what else I'm not really into is predictions. Okay, yes, I know I'm an astrologer. I know that I create forecasts, but forecasts and predictions are not the same. You know, when you think about it, right? Like I'm guessing that you've been on TikTok, you've been on Instagram looking at all of the all of the predictions for 2026. Geminis are going to have a great year, Cancers are going to have a terrible year, and everything in between. And for me, I'm like, are you really going to buy all that? Are you going to let somebody who doesn't know you, who doesn't know your entire chart, tell you that you're going to have a bad year simply because Uranus is entering Gemini? Like, no, I refuse to take that. And in fact, that is actually giving your power away. And so when we look at predictions, when we look at goals, they share the same assumption that there is a linear timeline, that time is going to travel from point A to point Z, and everything is going to fall in between. Like, how has that ever happened in your life? Goal setting and predictions also require control. Like, this is going to happen to you. And if it doesn't happen to you, well, then what happens? That's why I'm like, all I know why there are astrologers on the interwebs talking about all of these predictions. It's because it gets ears. People want to know. They want to know the specific results, but the universe doesn't work like that. So prediction and goal setting also play with those specific results. Now, I don't know about you, but even if I've gone after something, worked really hard, and showed up for something all the time, results are variable. I've never been able to say, this is the one result that you are going to have. And that makes this result either binary. Did you get it or did you not get it? Right? That yes, no, black and white, that binary. It is so fixed. There is no room for any gray area. And if the answer is no, you didn't get it, well, that just leaves you feeling like a failure. And my friend, I don't want you to feel like a failure. You did not fail. If something doesn't go exactly as planned or exactly as your goals, it means that it's an experiment. There are things, learning lessons, strengths to build, and you wouldn't have received any of those strengths or those lessons if you had just gone on and like went on your life and accomplished what you were supposed to accomplish. But I also don't want you to feel like a failure. You have gone through an experiment. Now, goal setting and predictions also focus on the how. You are going to make a lot of money and you are going to make money in this exact way. Right? That's kind of like a goal. I'm going to, earn $20,000 in a month and I'm only going to get this through this plan that I'm going to sell, 6 certifications, sell 4 websites, and that's it. Where is the surprise in that? Now, I'm not saying, again, don't write, like, I'm not saying to not create a goal, but what I am saying is that there's so much more than having a goal, and that your goal has to serve your vision and be able to be adaptable. Because you, as a change maker and a leader, it's not about what you can accomplish, it's about showing the people that you lead that you know where you want to go and have the adaptability to keep on going when things inevitably go off plan. So let's talk a little bit more about a vision. Okay. So goals demand what should and needs to happen. I need to make $20,000 a month. I need to, finish my website. I need to make 8 connection calls a month, like whatever your goals are, right? I need to lose 35 pounds, whatever, right? But vision inquires, right? It's asking, what am I open to happening? So if your goal was to make $20,000 a month, well, a vision would say, I am open to receiving at least $20,000 a month, right? Because when that vision, just the way that it's framed, I am open to receiving at least $20,000 a month. Doesn't require action. It doesn't require needing to do lots of work. We leave it open to possibility. Yes, we're still going to work. Yes, we're still going to go after the things that we want and offer our offers, make money and revenue in our business. But what if the universe has other plans for showering you with wealth? Now, a lot of times we think that there's only a few signs that can vision. Of course, Aquarius, because it's always looking into the future, and Pisces. Every Pisces leader that I have ever known has had like amazing visioning abilities. But visioning isn't just to the mutable signs or the Pisces, the late signs, the Pisces and Aquarius. All signs can vision. They can vision if they can see a future they desire, if they can trust in possibility, meaning like letting go of control. And yes, some have it easier than others, but really what it comes down to, besides, that trust and that desire, is making space to create your vision. If you're always filling up your calendar with doing all of these busy tasks, you're not allowing your nervous system, your brain, your intuition to get in a place of flow. Because a place of flow, sometimes your vision will come in a flash through a download. But sometimes a vision requires going deep and taking that time to be thoughtful. Maybe, yes, running a few tarot cards and opening up a larger spread. Maybe this is journaling over the course of a month. Maybe this is journaling over the course of, a few weeks. But this trust comes from deep cultivation. Now, I know why people don't want to spend the time creating a vision, don't want to commit to that time, and instead are like, well, I'm just going to like do these check off, these really easy things that people tell me I should be doing. And that's because when we are responsible for our own vision, it's not easy. It does require thoughtfulness, mindfulness in deciding what do you want. And that's why I'm a really big fan of new moon ceremonies. Again, if you listen to that last episode or any of like my previous episodes or books on new moon intention setting, it requires you to go inward, to reflect and spend time on deciding what you want instead of just saying, willy nilly. Now, I am guilty of this too, of not knowing what I want. In terms of like, I'm working on finishing up my book manuscript right now. My book, Astrology for Changemakers, is coming out. My published date is September 9th. And I've been working on my plan of the things that I want to do to launch my book. And it's really funny because somebody asked me, "Well, what does a dream successful book publishing book launch look like for you?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know." I was focusing on the goals. I want to have this many collaborations with different astrology influencers. I want to be on this many podcasts. I want to be like very goal oriented. And I was like, oh my goodness, look at me. I don't even have that vision. I don't know where I want to go with my big vision. So right now, I'm starting on my vision so that I can then come back to my plan. No wonder my plan, my launch plan wasn't working. It's because I didn't have a vision. And yes, vision requires going deep and being thoughtful. And I assume that if you are a listener here, that you are somebody that wants to go deep, that wants to cultivate and build something that lasts. So if you are, tune in right here because I want to talk about 9 different ways that visioning is more than seeing the future and how we contrast that with goals. Okay, so number 1 for visioning is more than seeing the future. I know, prediction, future. You've heard, right, that like astrology is about like the cosmic weather. And when we're looking at a weather predictions, whether it's the weather forecaster or the apps on our phones, the weather is saying, well, it's going to be sunny today or it's going to be rainy today. And we don't know exactly when it's going to rain or exactly what block it's going to rain on or how many inches of rain that exactly we're going to get. We have these just estimations. And instead of, like if it's going to rain, you're going to grab your umbrella. You're not going to wear your sandals or your suede shoes or boots or anything. You're going to be prepared. And so I want you to think about visioning as getting prepared and not being so connected on the exact outcome. Okay, so number one, results versus outcomes. Visioning, you're looking for the results versus the outcomes. What I mean from this is that, for example, when I was talking about my book launch plan, I want my goal I was like, this is a total mistake, was that I wanted to speak on 50 podcasts for my podcast tour. That is a SMART goal, a specific outcome. But I didn't think about the results. And really, why do I want to speak on 50 podcasts? Well, the result is that I want to touch the hearts of more people, that the more people that can hear and know that my book, Astrology for Changemakers, is for them, the more I can serve and make change in this world through astrology for leadership. So, results are much more open ended. Results are the impact that you want to have on the world. Results are based on that vision of the future versus outcome, again, is just binary. Did I go on 50 different podcasts? Binary, yes or no. But so what? What if I did go on 50 podcasts, but the results, nothing happened? So results are much more important to have. And then you can have outcomes that will support your results. Number two is certainty versus possibility. Possibility invites surprise. It invites anything that can happen. And surprise doesn't have to be scary. There are so many pleasant surprises, where certainty, again, is just like, well, it's in a box. So earlier, my example for earning $20,000, right? I need to earn $20,000 a month. That's certainty. But possibility, remember when that version, that example, I am open to receiving at least $20,000 a month. Open to receiving at least is the possibility, right? I don't have to work for it. That's receiving. Some of it, of course, is going to come through hard work, but others might come through surprises. So we leave it open to possibility with a vision. Now, because we're here for astrology, of course, we want to know our timelines, those planetary timelines. But remember, those planetary timelines are are part of bigger cosmic cycles. So when we're looking at goals, we are very concerned with a timeline, milestones, deadlines, goals, whereas a vision is more is curious and more connected to a cycle. What is the energy available to me now so that we know whether we can go with the flow or if we're going to be fighting it the entire time? Because you know what? Anybody that's ever tried to fight their own astrology, it's really you know how uncomfortable it is. If we know that we're going to have a Saturn cycle, we don't know that we have this timeline, it's going to happen for a year and here's going to be the peak, but nothing happens on the exact day of a timeline. Instead, we know that we're going through a cycle of maturation with a Saturn cycle. We're going through a cycle of where we need to contract. We're going through a cycle where we need to commit. And when we know that this is a time for committing, for being more resourceful, for being more committed and being more responsible, that is so much more powerful than trying to like complete everything in a specific timeline. So cycles are really visioning techniques. Now, the next one is control versus adaptability. If you're really into goals and prediction, I'm sure that you're really into control and micromanaging everything, micromanaging from, whatever hair is flying away to whatever, if the font is exactly perfect, which then blocks you from releasing something because it's not totally perfect because you're trying to control all the details. Whereas with visioning, we're looking at adaptability. How flexible are we? How much can we change depending on how things change day to day? And so being adaptable is built into visioning. That's why you have your results that are very open ended, because then you can adapt and change, knowing that you're always still headed and oriented in the right direction. Now, goals, as I said earlier, demand. They're saying, this is going to happen. Whereas visions invite, I am open to. Don't Isn't that so much more freeing to hear it as an invitation? I am open to disrupting and breaking through an old pattern. I am open to committing and showing up for this because it's very important to me. I am open to expanding this part of my life, this part of my leadership. And so when we're open to, we are allowing invitation to happen. We are saying, hey, universe, I want to co create with you instead of like demanding you to do something. Okay. So even notice if your prayers and your intentions are demanding or if they're inviting. Okay. Next, goals are static, whereas vision is ever evolving, right? Goals. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. This is going to happen by then. Black and white. Check the boxes. Cross it off. Whereas your vision adapts, similar to the adaptability, is they evolve, they change. So even though we know we're headed into the right direction, we're oriented towards, like releasing a book or impacting the world or changing the future of leadership. Obviously, those are all of my visions. It evolves day to day. Like this past year, I had to be so much more adaptable and change as I've been going through my health journeys. They change, the way I'm approaching it changes, but that vision of the future, that one is clear as day. Now, goals invite failure, whereas vision invites experiment. So, the binary, we talked about this earlier, but that binary nature of did I accomplish this goal or did I not accomplish this goal? Meaning, if I didn't win on this, all of a sudden I'm a failure. You're not a failure, my friend. I want you to see this as much more open, a vision, an experiment. Just because things didn't go exactly your way doesn't mean that you're a failure. You were going through an experiment, a lesson that you needed to learn, what not to do, what to try better, different constraints, different strengths that you built because of these different experiments and challenges that you've gone through. Isn't that so much better to look at all of your life's experiences as experiments where you're learning and adapting and gaining strength at every turn? Now, goals again are very accomplishment oriented, where visioning is very becoming oriented. Are you, I know this is kind of a tricky one because as an accomplished musician, in my classical music world, even saying that I have to change my voice because it's so resolute and serious. But I don't feel like an accomplished musician. I feel like I'm becoming a musician every day. I practice the same warm ups every single day. I practice the same concertos for decades now because there's a sense of blooming and becoming. There's not an accomplishment. Yes, maybe there's a performance that, there's a performance date, we finish that performance, we, accomplished that, check that off our list. But accomplish means that there's an end, where becoming means there's really implies a constant evolution, which brings us into the final ninth. A goal is finite and a vision is infinite. And so I know that you can already hear all the examples coming through: finite, black and white, finito. Everything is like in its box. It happened or it didn't happen. Whereas in infinite, we have our possibilities, our invitations, our evolutions, our experiments in becoming. So, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a goal or a vision? Now, as an astrology lover, I know that you're wondering, well, how is astrology going to help me create my vision? Especially when so many of us come to astrology to gain certainty. Now, working with the hundreds of clients that I have over the years, maybe like 1,000 at this point, I don't even know anymore. I know that my clients want certainty, and my job is to give them comfort with adaptability. And so, as I said, if you've been, looking at, all the upcoming year predictions, I don't blame you. I'm not, I know it's for fun. Please look at it for entertainment purposes only, because I don't want you to give your power away. When you say yes to an astrologer that is saying you're going to have a bad year, and you automatically think, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a bad year. Saturn is going through my seventh house. That means that all of my relationships are going to be like, go away. Yeah, you can think that. But how is that really going to serve you? What if instead astrology was actually inviting you into an opportunity so that you can prepare for what's ahead? Going back to that example with Saturn going through your seventh house, Saturn, again, the planet of contraction, it's also the planet of discipline and commitment, saying, I'm going to show up for this no matter what. And then fearing Saturn going through the seventh house or going through any house, because Saturn, wherever Saturn goes, it can contract. And so if you're fearing Saturn going through your seventh house and worried about your relationships, of course, you can go down the prediction rabbit hole and say, my relationships are going to fail this year. And if you allow an astrologer who's doing predictive astrology to tell you that's where you're going to fail, well, guess what's going to happen? Because your mindset is there and you end up creating your reality. But Saturn, more than contraction, is inviting us to create commitment. And from commitment is mastery. But when we commit, that means that we have the responsibility, we're taking responsibility to show up each and every day. So if Saturn is going through your seventh house and you are really interested in relationships, whether this be your romantic relationships or relationships with your clients, because the seventh house is about clients, then Saturn is saying, how are you going to show up for your clients every day? How are you going to be committed to your relationships? How are you going to learn the mastery part to cultivate and put your relationships first? That is what Saturn is inviting you into. And so, of course, wherever Saturn is going to go, traveling through your chart by house, and usually Saturn takes 3 years to go through a house, and maybe you have like a planetary aspect at that time. That's all going to inform you where you're being asked to show up and create commitment. This is how you prepare versus predict. And so when I'm looking at a new year, especially when you're looking at the vision of the new year, I want to look at the outer planets. Jupiter, Uranus, Saturn, and of course, the eclipses. I'm looking at Jupiter because, of course, Jupiter is the planet of expansion, but more than expansion, Jupiter is really about where are you open to growing? Where are you open to evolving? Where are you opening to your stretch potential? And of course, wherever Jupiter is transiting by house, going through Cancer and Leo in 2026, you can start to pinpoint, oh, okay, well, Jupiter is expanding my third house this year. Where do I want to open up into my own voice, my own messaging, and my own like expansion in my marketing? that is for me, and that absolutely is part of my vision, especially as I start to promote my upcoming book. And so Jupiter is going to help me there expand my message, expand my marketing, expand my voice, because that is where I'm intending I want my growth to happen. Now, Saturn, I mentioned already, is about that commitment and mastery. And so Saturn is really, instead of being, the big, bad, disciplined, archetype, Saturn is saying, hey, it's your responsibility. If you want something, this is where you need to show up. This is where you need to commit to yourself. This is where you need to have discipline. Is it going to be easy all the time? No. But if you show up and you have that commitment and you do the things that you promise that you're going to do because you are committed to this mastery, then guess what? This is where you're going to have those results that you are desiring, the mastery that comes from doubt. Now, of course, Uranus is the wild card. Uranus is where we can open up to disrupt old ways of being. Now, Uranus sometimes also gets a bad rap because we're thinking about disruption. Well, he's throwing a wrench into the project. He's, making things much more difficult for us because he's disrupting. But Uranus only disrupts the status quo, where things have been stagnant, where we've been, trapped by glass ceilings. Uranus comes in to break through. And so Uranus doesn't travel as far as Jupiter in a year. Jupiter is traveling, more than 30 degrees in 2026. Saturn is, traveling much less than that, about 10 degrees this year. And Uranus is traveling, well, I guess with the retrogrades and stuff, I'll have to get you those exact degrees. But Uranus is traveling much, much less. And we are glad that Uranus takes its time. Of course, if Uranus is aspecting one of your angles or one of your planets, you are going to feel this breakthrough even more deeply. But Uranus is inviting you to break through. So, where are you open to disrupting parts of your life? Things that got stagnant, things that feel constricted, things that feel like old versions of you that you really want to break free of. This is where you need Uranus. And so, working with a wild card like Uranus, you want to co create with the universe. You want to tell the universe what you are open to disrupting. And so, I had a client earlier. We are doing a year ahead reading, and we were looking at Uranus. And you can do a year ahead reading at any time. We're looking at 12 months into the future. And we were looking at my client's chart, and Uranus was going through her second house of money, values, and worth. And my client was mentioning that, money has been really good for her lately. She has this new well-paying job that has this consistent paycheck, but she has some clients from before she started this job that are still outstanding. They're still outstanding in their invoices, and she saved them a lot of money. And so we were looking at the old stories, the old version of my client that said, I'm just going to overgive. It's okay. I'm just going to keep on giving without receiving. And she wanted to disrupt that story. So we were looking at how Uranus is going to impact her year and coming up with ideas of how she could disrupt that old story to break that cycle of overgiving and how it bleeds through so many different parts of her life, not just in her business. And lastly, when we're working with visioning, especially at the new year, I am looking at the eclipses. We have eclipses moving into a new polarity into Aquarius and Leo. We are going to be having our first Aquarius eclipse coming up on the next new moon. And eclipses, those houses and polar opposites, are showing us where your story is ready to take a turn in your evolutionary path. Again, not to be afraid of. Eclipses have that your kind of Uranian energy, but the eclipses will show you where you're north node, where your soul potential, what house has that north node in Aquarius, where you're supposed to be moving towards, and what you're supposed to be leaving behind, where that south node is. And so when you're looking at astrology to help you, look at these planets and help them, have them orient you so that you can create a clear vision for in accordance, in flow with the energies as they are right now. Now, of course, visioning is so important here and now. In the bigger scheme of things, with our collective uncertainty in the world, and of course, your own personal spiral journey as you work and integrate some of your challenges into bigger leadership, visioning matters right now because we are at the beginning of our Gregorian year. Everybody's thinking about their quarterly plans and what's going to happen. But more importantly, we are on the cusp of eclipse season. And our very first eclipse is happening with the Lunar New Year. The Lunar New Year, or the Asian Chinese astrological New Year, always happens with the new moon in late January or early February. And this is always the Aquarius new moon. Hello, visioning. And so this is the perfect time for you to do your visioning. So if you've been having problems with your goals and feeling like nothing is sticking, or you're very uncertain, this is your time to create a clear picture of where you want to go based on your own astrology. And so this is the perfect timing to be doing this deep work. Again, a vision doesn't happen in one day. A vision happens over deep, thoughtful time. Yes, it can happen in a download, but more likely it's going to take a little bit of feeling into and time spent with yourself to reflect and get clear with what you want. So, if you are looking to join a visioning experiment that is full of ritual and community, we are going to be gathering on the Lunar New Year eclipse for my annual Vision Star Lab. Now, I created Vision Star Lab not because you need more information, because you don't need information. What you need is integration, space to listen, receive, and orient. And so if you want to join me for Vision Star Lab, please head on over to starpowered.com/vision so that you can orient your leadership for 2026. On the eclipse on February 17th, Tuesday, we are going to be meeting for 3 hours. I know that's kind of a lot, but trust me, we're going to be doing this work together. There's going to be so much integration time. There's not going to be homework. I want you to do the work and get your questions asked here and now, and then tie it all up and close the loop and embody it with ritual. And more importantly, by gathering with a global community to really do that community building and bonding that I know you are craving. So join me live on Zoom on Tuesday, February 17th. Sign up at starpowered.com/vision, because this is going to be your chance where you can attune to your North Star and co create with your people and the universe. In this immersive experience, we are going to look at where Jupiter is inviting you to expand and grow, understand where Saturn wants you to show up and commit. Invite Uranus to break through and liberate. We're going to be looking at all of these things. So we'll be decoding your natal chart with these major transits, identifying your opportunities, and move beyond goals. You will leave with a sense of direction, even if your path isn't clear. And so this is for you if your old ways of planning no longer work, if you want clarity without rigidity and weight, if you're ready to lead with intention, attunement, and courage, if you're willing to do the deep work that creates lasting change, and if you want a vision that can hold you through uncertainty. this is the workshop that you need. So please join me with Vision Star Lab because we will help you reveal your vision. So, my friends, thank you for joining me. If you're still listening, just thank you so much. I'm so grateful. As we're building community, if you know somebody who loves the intersection of astrology and leadership, please share this with them. I hope you found, your answer to vision. I hope that you were super clear for yourself of where you're open to evolving, where you're open to commit to show up for yourself, and where you're open to break through old patterns. This is your vision calling you in for 2026. Thank you again, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.
As a human design projector, my energy shines more brightly because of people like you who share my work. If you enjoy this podcast and want to help build a movement of innovative astrology and leadership and spark the intuitive revolution, please rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, or better yet, share this podcast with your change-making besties. We will all shine brighter together as we create the future we want to see.